Hello, music fans. I had an idea for a video where I would talk about albums that critics don't seem to like or that other reviewers rank poorly that I actually like. So for this video, I'm going to focus on 10 prog albums or prog-related albums that I found reviewers don't like, but I do like. And I used Rate Your Music and Prog Archives as my two sources of reviews and kind of got the average score from each and add them together. Their scores are out of 5. If you add them together, that makes a score out of 10. And I'll go in reverse order to the one that has the highest score to the one that has the lowest score in terms of what critics on those sites think. But all of these albums for me are like kind of between like a 8.9 and 9.3 out of 10. So I really like these albums, but critics don't. They all range between, from a critic's perspective on those sites, between a 5.22 out of 10 and a 6.28 out of 10. So all pretty low rated albums. Let's start with the number 10, which is an album from the band Queen. They're not really a prog band, but they're kind of prog related, like Bohemian Rhapsody is, I would say, is kind of progressive. The album's called The Game from 1980, and this got, when I checked, a 3.43 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, so they didn't hate it too much, but it got a 2.85 out of 5 on Prog Archive, so they weren't really too big on it. That totals to about 6.28 out of 10. For a band that made some of the greatest classic rock albums and songs, they do have a fair number of albums that are stinkers. Most people tend to agree that the Flash Gordon soundtrack, Hot Space, The Miracle, Made in Heaven, The Kind of Magic, and The Works are stinkers, and I agree with that as well. I don't really like any of those albums. But if only 6 out of 14 of your albums are bad and the others are all good, we can still call them a great band. I don't really even count the Queen and Paul Rodgers album, which, to be honest, I've never even heard because I've only heard bad things about it. But another one that kind of gets lumped in with these stinkers is The Game from 1980. But I feel that The Game is a top 5 Queen album, of course. I love the bass line and the funky groove of Another One Bites the Dust. I love the Elvis-inspired crooning song, Crazy Little Thing Called Love. But I think people don't really like it for some reason, and it's rated pretty poorly. On to the number 9 album on this top 10 here, which is from the band King Crimson, and it's the album The Construction of Light from 2000. This is their lowest rated album on Rate Your Music, with a 3.01 out of 5, and their second lowest on Prog Archives with 3.16 out of 5, so it totals about 6.17 out of 10. I actually really like the last 2 King Crimson albums, this one and Power to Believe. I often even consider them my 2 favorites. With this usually in the second spot, I do prefer Power to Believe. And I know their debut album is a classic, I agree with that, but I like these more metal-inspired moments on their newest 2. Some of these opinions in this video are probably going to be really unpopular, but that's just how I feel. My number 8 on this list is from the band Gentle Giant, and the album's The Missing Piece. This is their third lowest rated on Prog Archives, 2.96 out of 5, and Rate Your Music 3.1 out of 5. So it totals around 6.06 out of 10. I agree with critical consensus that their last 2 albums, Giant for a Day and Civilian, are their weakest albums. It seems like everybody thinks The Missing Piece is their third weakest, but to me it's closer to the middle of the pack out of their 11 albums, and middle of the road Gentle Giant is actually a really great album. I really love the song 2 Weeks in Spain that opens up the album. Just such a funky, danceable, but still cool and kind of progressive song. They definitely did start to go a bit catchier on this album, so that might be why people don't like it as much. It's not as quirky all over the place and adventurous as their previous albums, but they execute it really well on this one. Number 7 on this list is from the band Journey with their album Dream After Dream from 1980. It's a soundtrack album, which I don't usually like, but it got a 2.84 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, 3.21 out of 5 on Prog Archives, total 6.05 out of 10. And yeah, this is the lowest rated Journey album on Rate Your Music, but maybe I'm weird, but to me this is the best Journey album. It's actually my favorite out of all of them. I know it was made for a movie soundtrack. I really love the opening track Destiny. I think it's because it's the most progressive album they have with Steve Perry on vocals, and Steve Perry is widely considered the best vocalist Journey ever had. I agree with that, but a lot of the music they wrote while he was in the band is a little more on the pop rock and radio rock or arena rock vibe. This one has some of their earlier progressive rock sounds, but still has the great vocals of Steve Perry. Where am I at? I'm at number 6 now. Number 6 album on this list is Between the Buried and Me, their self-titled album from 2002. It got a 3.03 out of 5 on Rate Your Music and a 3 out of 5 on Prog Archives, totaling 6.03 out of 10. While I agree with most reviewers that this album is their weakest album, I still think even the weakest album by Between the Buried and Me is excellent, and I'm surprised that so many would think it's like a 3 out of 5 or a 6 out of 10. I can't fathom why. My number 5 on the list is Deep Purple with Abandon from 1998. This has a 2.85 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, 2.85 out of 5 on Prog Archives, totaling 5.7 out of 10. Rate Your Music has this as their second weakest album, but I actually think it's in their top half. And they've released a lot of albums, so this is in their top 10 out of their 21 albums, in my opinion. Number 4 is Muse, The Second Law from 2012. Prog Archives has this as in the bottom 4 Muse albums at 3.21 out of 5. Rate Your Music has it at the third lowest at 2.35 out of 5. For me, this is a top 3 Muse album. The critics total it 5.56 out of 10. A lot of reviewers think that their newest album, Simulation Theory from 2018, is their weakest, and I agree with them on that, but I noticed that a lot of them have Second Law near the bottom too. But for me, it's a top 3 Muse album. That, along with Origin of Symmetry, Black Holes and Revelations, are my top 2. All 3 of those albums are excellent. Maybe people don't like it because there's a bit of this like dubstep vibe in a couple tracks, but I find that kind of cool. I also like how they had the bass player sing on some of the songs instead of all of them being sung by Matt Bellamy. Number 3, this one's a really unpopular album in prog circles, but I'm going to defend it a bit here. It's Dream Theater, The Astonishing from 2016. Prog Archives has this in the bottom 4 Dream Theater albums at 3.32 out of 5. Rate Your Music has it as the lowest rated Dream Theater album at 2.16 out of 5, so that totals 5.48 out of 10. Yeah, a lot of people rank this as the worst Dream Theater album. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's their best, but I think it's an amazing album. It's maybe middle of the road Dream Theater, but that is an amazing album to me. I understand why some people don't like it though. I was into Disney movies as a kid, so I like musical theater, rock operas, and epic over-the-top concept albums. It is a bit cheesy, I'll say that, but if you like all that stuff and like progressive metal and great musicianship, I think you should like this. Yeah, the story is a bit cheesy, but I just embrace the cheese on this one. I love songs like Lord Nefarious, which sounds like a Disney villain song. It's just a really fun album. It was ambitious for them to release a long double album, concept album like this so late in their career, so I applaud them for doing that. But I know a lot of people don't like it. My number 2 is The Human Abstract, Mid-Heaven from 2008. Prog Archives has this as the lowest rated Human Abstract album. I agree, it is their worst of their three albums, but they have it at a 2.96 out of 5. Rate Your Music has it at a 2.46 out of 5, so totaling 5.42 out of 10. So I agree it's their weakest, but I think even their weakest album is excellent. I think even a lot of the band members don't like this one. They kind of publicly bash and hate this album, but I still really like it. I think there's a lot of great songs on it. I think maybe there was more creative control from the vocalist Nathan on this one, and that might be why the band members don't like it as much, because he left the band after this album, and the remaining band members didn't seem happy with the direction. But there's still some amazing guitar playing on here, amazing progressive metal songs. There are a couple ballads, and maybe that's what people don't like about it, but I actually think the softer songs are pretty catchy. I like the use of keyboards on here, which they did a little bit on their first album and their third album, but this is their second album where they kind of emphasize keyboards even more. I thought it was pretty cool. And my number one, the lowest rated album on my list of albums that I really love here and that defending albums that critics hate, is Yes, Big Generator from 1987. It's got 2.55 on Prog Archives out of 5 and 2.67 out of 5 on Rate Your Music. So the total there is 5.22 out of 10. Yeah, a lot of people don't like this one. I don't think it's their best, but I think it's probably middle of the road for me in terms of Yes, and an average Yes album is still kind of a 9 out of 10 for me. People probably don't like it because it's more pop rock than prog, so you do have to be ready for that, but the songs are just catchy, there's great guitar riffs. It still manages to be like intelligent pop rock. Surprising to me that this is the critics' most hated album on this list. Hope you found this video interesting. I might do a similar one for metal albums that critics hated that I like. Hopefully some other people online like some of these albums and are happy to see someone defending them. Let me know if there's some other ones that critics hate that you like. And until next time, peace out.